In our very first video, we talked about tags. We said that tags were key value pairs that are stored on every object in OpenStreetMap. In this video, we're going to explore tags in more depth. So let's start with just tags, and let's break it down into key and value, just like we did in the very beginning. So let's focus on keys for a bit and some general guidelines when you're looking at tags, what to expect, or if you're putting in tags, how to construct them. So in general, keys are all lowercase. In the example of name, which is a very common tag, right, we use name in all lowercase. The N is not capitalized. They're almost always in all ASCII characters. That just means that there's no Cyrillic or Chinese or any other non-Latin alphabet characters. They're almost always in English. There are a couple of German tags, but they're most commonly in English, and they're usually British English. In the example of color, in OpenStreetMap, it would be written C-O-L-O-U-R rather than the American spelling. Or another example would be the word pitch for a field. Another one would be theater. Right, we wouldn't necessarily use that spelling. So, okay, and let's continue on here. All right, and another feature of most keys is that they use underscores. So this isn't a key, but highway equals turning circle. Right, we use an underscore instead of a space, and a lot of these will apply both to keys and values, and we'll get to that in a minute. And another feature of keys is that we often use colons to represent subkeys. So we talked about the name tag. There's also an additional tag, which is name colon and then a language identifier. So FR for French, or RU for Russian, etc. So that colon we use as a separator to discuss sub-keys. So we've talked about keys. Let's talk a little bit about values. Mostly the same rules apply. Now there are a couple of exceptions. So we have in values free text or free text fields. So the example would be name, and the value of the name will always be just the whatever the value is. So in the example I've given of Main Street, right, it's Main Street with a space and capitalization. So that's always the exact value. But we have a lot of values that are selection, so that they can only be certain valid values. And we've used the example of bridge, deeps, B-R-I-D-G-E, and the value there is yes, right? So it can. I think there's a couple others, but the main value is always going to be yes. We've given the example of address interpolation, so ADDR colon interpolation. Again, we see this colon here, which we're using as the separator in our key. The values there can be even, or they can be odd, right? And if you put another value there, it's not allowed. But the allowed values are both under lowercase, and if there were spaces, they'd have underscores. So it's the same thing. And again, these values, lowercase, they're in ASCII, they're in English, British spelling, British terminology, and they use underscores. And let's see, what else do we have? Okay, and some of the values can be numeric, and so an example of that would be max speed. So now this tag represents the maximum speed you can go on a road in kilometers per hour. So that's just implied, kph, and the value here, let's say it's 100. That's always going to be an integer. It's going to be a number. Sometimes we have ranges of numbers. So in the example of house number, so we would go ADDR house number. Right? If we had a building that had a range of numbers from, let's say, 1 to 20, right, we could write that actually with this dash as the range. In addition, for lists, we can sometimes, and this is a rare case, but sometimes use commas as a separator. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would be functionally equivalent to 1 to 4. Okay, let's see some other things to note about keys and values. Well, first is you can't have a key twice. So if a place had two names, right, you couldn't put name equals I don't know. Let's say we had a place called Fred's Cafe, and it may have had an older name, let's say, or another name people know it by. Let's just say people call it Fred's. You couldn't put name equals both. There's usually a tag for something like this. So in this case, there'd be an alt name tag. But if you absolutely must positively have two values, what you can do is, instead of having the key twice, you could put it once with a semicolon as a separator. So that would look like this: name equals Fred's Cafe, semicolon, Fred's. And that's just a hint to the renderer, which we'll talk about in a future video, that these are two separate values. Let's see, what else do we need to talk about? I think we should talk about subkeys. So some keys like the key restaurant. So let's say we have amenity equals restaurant, has keys that can appear in the object, which are only really valid for that key combination. So amenity equals restaurant, cuisine equals Chinese. Cuisine equals Chinese is not valid on every type of object, right? You couldn't put this on just a regular building. You couldn't put this on a road. But obviously it makes sense here when we're talking about a restaurant. And there are a bunch of others. Another example for restaurants is diet equals, let's say they have gluten-free, so they could say gluten-free. So again, diet is only really valid in combination with amenity equals restaurant. So where can you find tags? I'll give more of this information in the description, the video description, but there's a feature page on the OSM wiki. So OSM wiki has a feature page which has all of the main keys. Usually your editor will come with presets, and or it'll come with a search system. And generally you should use your editor presets or search. You don't have to remember all these keys or memorize them. And then lastly, if you're not sure about a key and it's not in the editor presets and you're just not sure which, and there might be multiple keys that represent the same thing, you can use tag info, which again I'll link to all these. I'll link to the feature page and tag info. Tag info gives you statistics on how often a key is used and what combinations of keys exist, and also where geographically a key might be more common. So you can use the OSM wiki, you can search, you can use the feature page, you can use your editor presets, or you can use tag info. Those are really the most common ways of finding tags. So just to go over, we've said again that that tags are key value pairs. We've given some general guidelines. This should be underscore here. We said that they're lowercase, that they're ASCII, that they're in English usually, that it's British English, that we use underscores for spaces, that we use colons for subkeys, and that we have different kinds of and that we have different kinds of values. Some are free text. Actually, I'll just move it over here. That values can be free text, that they can be numeric. We can have lists, and lists are usually comma separated. When we don't have lists and we have to put in multiple values, we first look for an alternate key. And then second, we can use semicolons. And we have some keys, some tags actually, only valid with other tags. And we've gone over where to look for new tags. So I think we've covered all the basics of keys, and I hope this helps clear up some things. So see you in the next video.